Welcome on Texas football. Time for rapid reactions. I'm Bobby Burton. Sunday morning special for you guys. Longhorns defeating Clemson 38-24. I'm here alongside with Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel of On Texas Football. This episode brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy. He's been with us all season long. Adam at the Lowy Law Firm. Hey guys, got to ask you initial thoughts on this win for Texas. Where it puts them in the college football playoff picture now, going to the Peach Bowl and playing Arizona State. Gerry, I'll start with you. Initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think Texas is a really good game from an offensive standpoint headed into a game against Arizona State where they're going to be favored by at least as much as they're favored against Clemson. Obviously, it's going to be a neutral site, but it's going to be similar for me. I mean, Texas is going to have a bigger athletic version in this game against Arizona State coming up. It's the offensive line and the defensive line. And you saw even against Clemson, who had really good players Saturday night, Texas still had a talent advantage. Just where Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, Pete Kwiatkowski, the entire staff on both sides of the ball have built this team to be and this program to be is when you can walk out against Clemson and you have bigger, more athletic players overall on both lines of scrimmage combined, you're in a really good place. And against Arizona State coming up on January 1st, Arizona State's going to walk out on the field, and it's going to look to me a lot like Indiana walking out against Notre Dame, but I think Arizona State's a better team than Indiana. Texas just has bigger, better athletes across the board than what Arizona State is going to put out. But I thought it was just a really good performance offensively by Texas. I thought you always have games where you have to respond to adversity. Normally that's happened earlier in the season before a playoff game. Texas offensive line had this respond to more adversity in a playoff game than they had to all season.
In two plays.
Two starters. I mean, Hayden Connor goes from left guard to center Saturday night. Trevor Gooseby keeps going from left tackle to right tackle, bouncing back and forth whoever gets hurt, which game it is. He ends up playing right tackle after coming in for Cam Williams, after Cam Williams dominated everybody until he got hurt. So I think it was a great response to adversity by the Texas offensive line. It showed versatility on their offensive line as well. And, it was great to see Jaydon Blue have a really good game. And I think the Arizona State game on the turf is going to present more opportunities for Jaydon Blue.
CJ, you were in the press box. What did you think of the game and listening to the coaches' press conference, players, and even assistant coaches got some time with the media? What did you think?
To me, I think Gerry mentioned it there, but Texas came into this game heavily favored, right? They had the largest point spread in their favor of any team playing in the first round. And, it got a little shaky maybe towards the end of the third quarter, as it normally has been for Texas this second half of the season, but they took care of business, and the size advantage, the talent advantage, all of that was pointed towards the trenches, which is going to need to continue to be a key for the Longhorns. But my goodness, were they working that Clemson front seven in the stretch zone? It was a beauty, 300 rushing yards essentially until the 6 yards lost at the kneel downs at the end of the game. They could do whatever they wanted up front, and it hasn't been the case for most of the season. You're right. You saw towards Kentucky, Arkansas, maybe a little bit, Texas A&M, they had that rushing success. They weren't having the holes that they were having like they did against Clemson. Now, is that sustainable throughout the playoffs? Probably not. But to your point, Gerry, I do think that you're going to have that same success against Arizona State in round two. So for me, it was all about finding that complementary aspect. It's so easy for this Texas offense to score points when the rushing game is working, right? That was a complete non-factor against Georgia in the SEC championship game. And Quinn hit a red zone throw, right? That throw to Gunnar Helm, that was a beauty, right? That was a really good ball on a route that was adjusted mid-play by Gunnar Helm that we found out later on in the press conference afterward. There's still plenty to clean up. And I think that's kind of where I lie is when Texas does take the 2 steps forward, there's always a little bit of a hesitancy that's pulling them back. 3 turnover on downs today. I don't know when that's going to come back to bite Texas, but at some point it will. They got to continue to be strong on the first and second downs. Quinn has to hit that crossing route to Matthew Golden. It's just little things like that prevent me from saying that was an all-out A+ game. It was a good game. They did the job, but there's still parts of it that I'm still wondering when that will come back to bite Texas.
Hey, something major happened Saturday night as well, Bobby. Texas is the orange uniform national champions for 2024.
Yeah, Tennessee went down. Texas beat Clemson. The real UT is official, I guess, as far as college football playoffs are considered as well. Y'all mentioned all of those things. The thing that grabbed me on Saturday is the offensive output. Texas hasn't scored 38 points in a game like that since when? Florida, right? No short fields. I mentioned this in postgame, and I'll say it again here. It gave me hope that Texas, if they were getting a shootout like frankly, like the Big 12 used to be all the time, and Texas would have to win a shootout, this gave me even feel like, hey, Texas might be able to win a shootout, actually. Whereas that may be not something that they'll have to do. Oregon or Ohio State, whoever Texas plays, if they were to beat Arizona State, is most likely going to be a shootout to some level. Yeah. Now, Texas, they'll play good defense. I'm not saying that, but good players are going to score. You know what I mean? That's going to happen. And so I think that gave me some faith in one of the lasting mentions here. The other thing that I would say is the Texas defense continues to make key stops. Texas started the game. Clemson was 2 of 2 on third downs, including a touchdown on the crossing route. I made a mental note. Boy, this looked like the Houston game for last year or the Oklahoma game where the crossing routes were open all game long, right? Well, you know what? They weren't. And it was, the exclamation point was the very final play of the game by Clemson when Michael Taft blew up that same play that went for a touchdown earlier. Combine that with the fact that they were 2 of 2 on third downs in that first drive. They finished the game 3 of 12. So after that first drive, Clemson was 1 of 10 on third downs the rest of the way. A lot of factors, a lot of things we could talk about, big plays, et cetera. And we'll get into that here in a little bit more. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsors each and every week for the Rapid Reactions is Adam Lowy and his group at the Lowy Law Firm. They've been helping injured Texans for more than 20 years. Just reach out to them via loweylawfirm.com. A great thing about Adam and his group, they offer a no strings attached free consultation if you think you might be due compensation based on an injury in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind. Adam's a great guy. Really been sponsoring us for a while, and we appreciate him very, very much. All right, CJ and Gerry, I want to ask you guys next. Were y'all surprised, not just by the dominance of the Texas offensive line on Saturday, but how well Jaydon Blue was the benefactor of that as much or more than Trey Wisner? To me, who had Jaydon Blue going for $150 or $170 in total yards? If you can
not even Jaydon Blue.
What's that?
Not even Jaydon Blue.
Yeah, Jaydon Blue didn't have it. Jaydon Blue,
he's a confident guy. No.
Yeah, but you think about that. That's what this team needed and has seen across the board. You mentioned the depth that he's created, Sarkaz. Well, whether it's Jaydon Blue, Trevor Gooseby, Cole Hudson, who comes in, right, because Hayden Conner moves to center. You talk about Bill Norton in the red zone, guys like that. Texas seems to have depth at a lot of places right now, and that may have ended up being the difference between them and Clemson on Saturday. CJ, what did you think of the Texas depth?
It was huge, and it was about 8 guys on the offensive line saw at least some sort of snap. A lot of them played the extended amount of time. I've thought this for a little bit now, and I think after seeing it, I think maybe the most underappreciated guy in this Texas program is Cole Hudson. For being a big-time contributor over the last 3 years. He was a starter his first year. He's played, probably 25% of the snaps so far offensively this year. Basically every third possession you see him out on the field. To see him in an extended role again, and Texas relied on him pretty heavily against Georgia as well, I think that speaks a lot, and not just to the talent that they have or the depth that they have, but the willingness of Trevor Gooseby and Hayden Connor to move to center and Cole Hudson to jump in and Kyle Flood to have all of these guys be able to do this. It's rare. And I think that should be appreciated a little bit more, maybe talked about a little bit more from us and Texas folks in general, because that's not a common thing, right? You lose a starting center. Normally you see a significant dropout. You see Texas lose a first round, second round right tackle. You normally see a pretty significant drop off. And I think there needs to be a tip of the cap, and I'm doing it right now. I think that Texas offensive line for me is the game ball winner.
And I want to add to that. One cool thing about Texas winning this game, aside from winning a college football playoff and all these guys that will be either seniors or early interest in the NFL draft heading on to the next level. When Jake Majors takes the field against Arizona State January 1st, he will officially have the most games played ever as a Texas Longhorn for an individual player.
Wow, that's sweet.
I don't think that's got enough mention either, probably.
Good point.
That means you've been healthy as well. So Jake Majors will own that record, the most games played as a Texas Longhorn when he takes the field against Arizona State.
Question for you as we talk about this and think about yesterday's game. What did you think of the overall defensive performance? Were you a little concerned by it? I mentioned they kind of rebounded after that first drive, but then Klubnik kind of got hot. Or was that just it? He got on the same page with his receivers, and they were playing from behind, and it was a high-risk, high-reward offense for them. What did you think of the defense overall? Gerry, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so a little concern if you go up against Oregon in a semifinal. If you can get past Arizona State and you go up and score, this is the first time I've said, yeah, Oregon's fast. Now, the interesting thing if you get into a game like that is this was the first time I said, okay, Oregon can score 30 plus on a neutral field against Texas because there were too many, whether it's lack of eye discipline, whether it's couple of positions being exposed against better players than they faced all year, better quarterback, maybe better targets around that quarterback. This game kind of gave you a little pause because you always wondered what happens if Texas faces a really good offensive team. And Clemson was minus a running back and run game Saturday night and doesn't have a high-end offensive line. They're okay on the offensive line. And they were still a couple of calls or Bill Norton stop away from scoring 31 points in Austin and put up more yards than anybody has. I think Florida put up 320 in Austin, so it was almost 100 more. That was my concern. It got to the point where Texas had moved Barron off a corner to nickel because they felt like they had to make a move, right? They made moves that they hadn't really been forced to make all year because they were getting beat. So that was a little concerning for me. Now they only gave up 30 of 12 on third downs, guys, and they only gave up 24 points. But CJ, Clemson moved the ball with relative ease at times, and that hadn't happened this year.
Yeah, and look, we knew coming into this game, Clemson was the second best first quarter scoring team in the entire country, right? That opening script from Riley over there, the offensive coordinator, we knew that was going to be good. They go down the field, 12 plays, 75 yards, find the end zone. Okay, let's see what happens after that. And I thought Texas settled in nicely after that. 7 possessions, you end up with 3 points put on the board for Clemson. But to your point, that second half comes rolling around and throws are completed. Big plays are made. It felt like Clemson was inching closer and closer to making this a really interesting game, and they did. I don't want to go down the route of saying every quarterback Texas plays in the playoffs is going to have one of their best career games, but after Penix last year and some of the throws that Klubnik was making, I'm sitting there thinking, what's going on here? But I thought above anything, that was a really impressive game for Cade to come back home to Austin, a game with a lot of emotion. It did give me some hesitancy in terms of the back end specifically. We saw Clemson target Manny Muhammad, 4 straight plays and have some pretty significant success. That's a concern because he's been that guy where you don't hear a lot about him because he's doing his job. As a cornerback, that's exactly what you want. I'm not sounding the panic alarms or anything like that, but it gave me some hesitancy for sure.
And the other thing, Bobby, in that is if you advance look, Oregon has a tough game against Ohio State coming up. That was a 1-point game in Eugene. Who knows what's going to happen? But we're looking because this is now all about matchups when you get to this point in the playoffs. Oregon also is a tempo team. And tempo gave Texas issues with Clemson. I think Oregon may be the only team that can play that high level of tempo successfully. But that, when you look at matchups potentially down the line, Saturday night Clemson, the success they had tempo kind of gives you some pause against Oregon because they will copy that and can.
One of the key pieces for me, and CJ, you talked about the 7-0 lead by Clemson, is how well Texas responded to that.
Yeah.
We've seen that, that could have easily snowballed, right? Instead, Texas took the ball, drove the length of the field, tied it up, came back and scored on the next possession, went up eventually 28-10 at half. They did not let that first drive by Clemson dwell with them. They responded. I think that's a sign of a team that's growing a little bit, right? Because we've seen that be a negative before, and again, big time. All right, let's ask this question because I want to talk about this because I think it's something that Texas fans want to think about. What's the legacy of Quinn Ewers now? Consecutive 12-win seasons for Texas, 3-year starter. What is the legacy of Quinn Ewers at this point? Is he the greatest quarterback of all time in Texas history? No. Pretty darn good, though, guys. And you can say, oh, well, this other guy may throw better, all this other stuff. Pretty strong freaking legacy, in my opinion. 12-2 right now, the Longhorns, and playing in the national quarterfinals 1 year after being in the national semifinals. That's high cotton, in my opinion. Gerry, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard. It's almost like all the other sports conversations of guys in the past versus now. Because if there was a 4-team playoff this year, I'm not sure Texas is in after losing in the SEC championship. So that's a difficult thing. So I would say Vince, obviously. I would say Colt. And then I would say in modern history, it's going to be Quinn. Look, I mean, one more win in Atlanta in 10 days, and Texas in the national semifinals for second year in a row. I mean, so Quinn's got something nobody else has, but Vince has the national championship in 4th and 5. And Colt is just had an amazing career at Texas. And, if there was a 12-team playoff back then, Vince and Colt would have been in multiple ones as well. So that's kind of the way we have to look at it. But I think, look, Quinn was in a tough spot because if Texas had if he had a really bad game and they had lost, I'm going to be real. He'd have been sitting right next to Chris Sims in Texas fans' mind.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of this was a little bit of a do or die for him.
It was. I mean, because there was only really one direction that could go for him, and whether it's fair or not, man, it's a quarterback's life in the fishbowl at Texas. If he had had a bad game and Texas had lost, he would have been compared to Chris Sims at Texas, and that wouldn't have been fair to him. But that's what would have happened. So he's now elevated beyond that, and I think he's really a modern day quarterback. He's only looking up at Vince and Colt in the minds of Texas fans now.
Your thoughts on that, CJ?
Yeah, I've juggled with this for a while because to y'all's point, he's going to be the quarterback that got Texas out of the dark ages, right?
Yeah,
and there needs to be credit given for that because it was dark and it was really bleak at times, especially at the quarterback position when Texas was not doing well on the field. I think that when you look at it from a Texas quarterback history, obviously I'm not as well versed on some of the guys pre-Vince Young compared to y'all, but I'll say this. Since Vince Young, I think that there's been a certain level of tiers, right? Vince, Colt, and I think there's a couple tiers that are empty before you start getting to the Sam Ellingers and whoever else might fit in that same category. Quinn's in that area, but to get to where you want to be with the Colt and the Vinces, we talk about putting on the cape. They took the game and basically put the game in their own hands and decided the outcome. Will we see that from Quinn? Saturday, it was a team effort, right? Moving forward, he's going to be asked to do that. And that's where I think the ultimate legacy defining moment will come for Quinn. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? But at the end of the day, he has a solid floor. To get to that next tier, it's going to come some point later down the road.
I would say I would add this, Bobby. if Texas wins 2 more games,
Ooh.
I think Quindon is right about even with Colt McCoy in a lot of ways. Because Vince and Colt played for a national championship.
Yes.
Texas needs to win a couple more. If Quinn makes an appearance in a national championship game, I think he has a chance to continue to elevate himself into that conversation.
Yeah. I think Quinn's ahead of Sam.
Yeah.
And he's more of a winner at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know that I agree with the complete explanation of a tier. I do think that right now it's Vince, then Colt, and then Quinn, and then Sam. From a modern era, so to speak, last 25 years, I think that's fair. I think Chris Sims is similar to Sam actually, as well as Major Applewhite. I think Quinn's elevated above that. My thought process too is that part of what Quinn Ewers has done is taken Texas out of the dark ages. What Vince Young did was put Texas over the top. Right. There's a difference. And so they're going to be viewed differently. And neither of them, I'm not trying to, position one over the other or anything like that, other than to say it's just the context of what we look at Texas football. And Gerry, you're right. You called it a fishbowl, the Texas quarterback position. It is. There's no doubt about it. All right, a couple other things to talk about. And I want to ask y'all this. Is special teams going to cost Texas a shot or a national championship? Because, man, there's not much special about Texas special teams right now. Bert Auburn did fine on Saturday, but Silas Bolden dropped a punt. Matthew Golden took out an ill-advised kickoff. There was a low-liner punt. Somebody's going to take advantage of this against Texas. Georgia did it, right, with the fake punt. A&M did it with a block punt. Somebody's going to take advantage of Texas, and it could end up costing them a game. Is that going to be what cost Texas a game in the college football playoffs? Is that possible?
Well,
it's possible.
The missed field goals against Georgia too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's real, right?
It is. Look, I'm almost to the point now where I'm hoping Texas fair catches everything.
Yeah,
everything, just like punts and kickoffs.
I am, because when have we seen an extended kickoff return that hasn't had a block in the back or a hold, right? It's been too often. And, I love Silas Bolden because he gives you that, quick shot of exhilaration. You don't know what you're going to get. And then the punt return, that's not always a good thing. And he was fortunate to hop back on that ball last night. But you start looking at it in the sense of when the margins get as thin as they are now in the college football playoff, look, a different bounce, and that's Clemson's ball at the 40-yard line. So I'm kind of to the point now where don't even roll the dice. If you want to call punt safe every play, I'm completely fine with it. But yeah, it's getting pretty thin right now, and it's surprising because we've seen really, really good special teams units at Texas with Jeff Banks. This one's not.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's.
Here's my thought. Is this where we're going to be talking about in the future in college football with the portal, not being able to truly build the depth you want? I mean, all these coaches have talked about Texas has.
It's special teams being a casualty.
Your gunners, your experienced guys that would be gunners, that they're not going to stick in programs, right? Because they're going to go start somewhere else where they'd be the really good special teams players for 2 or 3 years. I just kind of wonder if there's going to be inconsistencies in special teams because those guys aren't going to be sticking around programs.
Do you think it's that, or do you think it's just because Texas might be just kind of young at the gunner spot, right? It was Keaton Crawford, it was Keelan Robinson last year. Keelan transferred in, but 5th-year guy. Keaton Crawford, 4th-year guy. I believe it's Warren Roberson on one end, and I believe it's DeAndre Moore on another. If not a Gavin Holmes somewhere in the mix, those are 2 sophomores. I think that plays a role as well, to your point. Just adding guys that have been in the system for a long time ultimately is going to be a pretty significant development for future special teams units.
The crazy thing about gunners, when we talked about it preseason, now think about where we're at headed into game 15, is it? Yeah. And is if Cedric Baxter doesn't get hurt this year, is Trey Wisner a gunner and third-team running back?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Lost your best gunner to a running back injury preseason.
Yeah. That's true, but I do think that Trey Wisner has found something. Hey, quick injury update, CJ. You heard the news last night. Give folks an update on all of the injuries that occurred and the outlook, at least at this point, to the best you know.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian spoke to us yesterday after the game. 3 injuries that they were monitoring. Obviously, Jake Majors at center was taken out of the game. Running back Trey Wisner was taken out of the game. He said both of them could have played and finished the game if absolutely need be. Obviously, Texas did not need them per se on the field to finish that game, but that is a positive that both could have had the opportunity to go back in. On the other hand, we saw right tackle Cam Williams leave the game with a knee injury. It looked much worse than I guess it is, because he did give it a go to go back into the game to start the second half. Played a snap, said not for me today, came back to the sideline. An MRI is expected Sunday afternoon, and Texas will continue to monitor him moving forward to Arizona State. Fortunately, 10 days instead of just 7 between games.
They couldn't have thought that it's an ACL.
No,
put him back out there, right? I mean, maybe it could have been an MCL,
yep,
or something like that, but it wouldn't have been an ACL. They wouldn't have put him back out there. Not a big guy like that.
No, definitely not. And look, he was on the floor, or he was on the ground for a pretty significant amount of time. It took him a long while to get off the field, both from sitting up to standing up and then walking off the field. It looked and felt much more severe than I think it actually was, which is a significant positive for the Longhorns.
What was it? An ankle separately? Was it an ankle or a knee with Wisner?
I think it was a knee. I think it was a knee. I think they all got leg whipped in a weird way, and Cam fell on. Somebody fell on him, obviously.
Okay. He went straight to the stationary bike after halftime, and I believe they showed it on the TV broadcast as well. Anytime you see Trey on the sideline, he's on the bike again. But he was trying to get back into the game, it appeared, and then Texas, of course, was just like, you know what? Let's let Jaydon Blue have his day.
Okay. Hey guys, before we let folks go on this rapid reactions, looking forward to the next 10 days. Okay, Texas will get back after it on January 1st. They'll likely take off Christmas, come back on the 25th or 26th, the night of the 25th, early 26th, get going over to the Peach Bowl. The question I have for you guys on this, you think that Texas is fresh enough even this deep into the season? I get the feeling that they're relatively healthy based versus the other teams that are similarly situated, that a lot of them Texas has lost 2 players to injuries for the year that are of importance, really. Cedric Baxter, preseason, Derek Williams about halfway through the regular season. Other than that, Texas is relatively healthy, and with 10 days between games, they can get even healthier, maybe.
And I said this last night, but on the end of a watch with us, I think you could get through the January 1st game without playing Isaiah Bond and see how close to 100% you can get him. And I think the Texas wideouts, I think Texas has a huge advantage against Arizona State. I mean, I think the corners play really well for Arizona State. I think they're a very good scheme and they're coached up well, but it's just a talent advantage Texas has, especially up front on the offensive line. Now, I think this, the 10 days off, the 9-10 days off is huge for teams right now. And I would, I've thought about this, and maybe it's revisionist history because Texas didn't get a bye. I'm not sure I wouldn't rather be Texas right now than Arizona State. Because you know what? Arizona State had all this time off, but their best receiver's still out. But Texas actually came back and got some confidence offensively, right? Where Arizona State, are they going to be rusty?
Yeah.
Texas was in the Sugar Bowl last year.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Rapid Reaction. Thanks again to our friend Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. 20-plus years of experience. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including an 18-wheeler or ATV, give Adam and his group a ring. LowyLawFirm.com, free, no strings attached consultation for Adam over at loeylawfirm.com. Any final thoughts from you guys before we let folks go on rapid reactions this morning? Texas, for me, Texas 12-2 and headed back to the elite of college football. I can't say enough about that other than, more power to it. I mean, Steve Sarkisian, Gerry, you mentioned it at the very outset. They've recruited and constructed a roster for this type of run.
Yeah.
And now they're coaching them to a level that they're going to get there. I mean, they really are. 38 points is a big-time offensive performance as well. Y'all have anything y'all want to finish with?
Just in the sense that, this was really the first time for me that the defense maybe gave me some hesitancy. Again, if that's the case against a game in which Cade Klubnik played lights out for most of it, some really, really high-level NFL throws from the opposite hash down the sideline. I thought he was a big-time thrower. It's all about the pressure for me, and I think Texas can continue to do that against guys that aren't as mobile as him until maybe they face a Dylan Gabriel, maybe a guy that can throw on the run a little bit better. Arizona State, it'll be a challenge, but to what's left in the playoff, I think this is another get-right game. One more as tune-up of a game if you can before going into a semifinal matchup. That's how I'm looking at it.
Gerry, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think Texas matches up with Arizona State extremely well. I think on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and Clemson presented something that Arizona State won't. That's multiple skill guys that'll be NFL players. Arizona State's best wide receiver is out, really good player. And I think Texas matches up really, really well with Arizona State.
All right. Thank you very much, Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel, both of ontexasfootball.com. We've got plenty of articles on ontexasfootball.com this morning. Make sure you check it out. Myself, CJ Vogel, Gerry's got a little recruiting scoop out of the portal as well that you can read on there at ontexasfootball.com. For Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been Rapid Reactions brought to you by Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. Hook 'em, guys.